Hey, Lord. All right, so here's what we're doing. We're going to be in Matthew 13 and Mark 9. We're going to kind of be bouncing back and forth, and we're going to pull a little bit of the Old Testament into it as well, because Jesus is talking in parables, and the parables do not stand alone. They're not supposed to stand alone. Every parable Jesus told builds off of something that he says. I don't know where he said them, how many times he said them, but you can rest assured that what he's doing is he's providing a holistic picture here. And you kind of have to work back and forth between them sometimes. I've said this before, and this is important. I think, my opinion, you get more out of reading the Bible when you look for themes within what you're reading, rather than just reading it in isolation. So when you see something, and you go, okay, where, for example, it says salt. Why did he use the word salt, for example? What's the interpretation of that? And so there'll start to be this theme that will develop from it. And anyway, you talk to too many people, and I think all they do is, for example, I'm not opposed to this, but reading the Bible in a year. Well, when you read the Bible in a year, everything you're reading is basically, because one time it's pulling from here, one time you know what I'm talking about. And when you get through with that, what you've basically done is just kind of gone through the Bible in a year, but I don't know that you have the context to it. So that's a good thing to do, but keep the context while you're doing it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So this is the parable of the weeds. We did last week, we did the parable of the sower. So one thing has already happened here. The first parable Jesus tells is the seed is the good stuff, right? Now, in this case, what he's going to talk about is what comes out of the ground itself. So he's already changing and mixing analogies here, so it's important. But let's read the parable. This is what it says, starting in verse 24. He said, he told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, did you sow the good seed in your field? If you did, where did all these weeds come from? And the owner says, well, an enemy did this. And the servants asked him, do you want us to go pull them up? And he says, no. Because while you're pulling up the weeds, you're going to take the roots of the wheat with it. So let them grow together until the harvest. And at that time, the harvesters will collect the weeds first, tie them in bundles to be burned. They'll gather the wheat and bring it into the barn. All right, so then Jesus explains that in verse 36. He says he left the crowd and went into the house. You will find that house mentioned in Mark as well. It's a house in Capernaum. And so this is probably the house where it talks about in Matthew 13, where it says he left the house and went to the lake and started talking. So apparently the house was known. The house, right? Not a house, the house. So this must have been, if those walls could talk, it would have been a fun place to kind of hang around. So he says he left the crowd and went to the house. His disciples came to him and they said, all right, explain this one to us. And he says, well, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. Now in the previous parable, it says that some places the seeds were ate, the seeds didn't hit and they didn't get very good roots. The seeds were choked out by weeds, and then the seeds hit good soil. Now you got to be careful with that parable, because if you're listening to that, it sounds like some of us are designed to be Christians and some of us are not. What happens is it says that Jesus simply just threw the seed where? Everywhere. And now you got to kind of get back between seeds and people. Some people were smart enough to recognize, I need this. And as a result, they went and they clung to it. When they clung to it, they produced fruit. But if you read it the wrong way, it's like you're thinking, okay, well, that parable is a parable about mercy. He threw the seed everywhere. And he knew And so now it shifts a little bit, and instead of talking about the seed, it's talking about the one who sowed the seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. All right, something just changed right there. What did these people think they were coming for? Israel. And he's telling them right now, it's a bigger picture, guys. We're going to talk about that in just a second. He's going to make it clear to his disciples, we are here for Israel right now. But there's a time coming where we're going to franchise. Go ye therefore into all the world. But first the picture, but he's already telling them, this is going to be a bigger picture. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the people of the kingdom. The weeds are the people of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. That picture of being burned in the fire, you can put a note if you want to. He's coming from Daniel 12. This is Daniel in the lion's den, where the hot fiery furnace, there's an allusion to that. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out his kingdom, everything that causes sin and all who do evil. Throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears, let them hear. So the first thing I want to tell you is, you can read this and go, is he trying to describe hell, a literal hell? Well, if he is, then he's also trying to say that we're going to shine like the sun in the kingdom. He's using poetic language here. He's describing, this is how good it's going to be for you. This is how bad it's going to be for you. He's going to keep, when they said these words, and I've got something here from the Jewish tradition in a second, Gehenna. What was Gehenna? It was a bad, nasty place. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit in a second too. But my point being, he's not really trying to talk about people burning in hell right here. What he's trying to talk about, what you're going to see again, is his mercy. And so here we go. So here's the first thing you can take away from what he said. The kingdom of heaven is going to produce a harvest. And it's going to produce a harvest even though there's weeds amongst it. In other words, the church is going to persevere. The church is going to prevail. Now, if that's going to be the case, then the church needs to buck up. At 911, when the buildings caught on fire, where were the emergency responders going? Up. In fact, some of the emergency responders were told, get out. And they sent back and said, can't follow that order. There's still people up there. Our job is to go up. Too many times in the Christian church today, when there's a 911, you want to know, where do we go?
Scatter.
We go out.
Scatter around.
We don't go where the first responders are supposed to go. We go where my hind parts are liable to not get burnt. That's right. So I've had people tell me stuff before like, well, aren't you worried about you might get drawn into something? Well, sometimes as Christians, we go the opposite direction. We go the place where the other folks don't go. We're supposed to be the one that stands by the brother when the brother's the one that needs to be supported. We're the one who's supposed to be willing to speak to something when something is wrong. And if we retreat from that, then where are the weeds and where is the harvest? The weeds are choking us out, just like in the previous parable from last week. So it says we will produce a harvest in spite of hard hearts, in spite of competing pressures, and despite failure. Paul got so aggravated at one of his places that he said, no one's listening. I don't remember, I wasn't planning on bringing it, just came to mind. But he said, no one's listening here. I'm done, I'm out. No one, and it's in Acts if I remember. But the point being is that it was frustrating. Can you imagine what it was like to be a person like Paul who had absolutely put it all on the line? He had laid it out. And I just want to tell you what I got, Aiden. I just want to tell you how good it is. And Aiden goes, I don't care. And this was frustrating. This was frustrating. But what did Paul do? Kept going. And so there's the answer for us. Sometimes we look at things and we go, oh, how in the world can this be going on? Oh my, and we clutch our pearls instead of just going, let's get in the building, guys. There's a fire in there. Let's put it out. Well, that's part of it. And it says that those in the kingdom will shine like the sun. Now, I don't think those are literal words. I think what those are saying is you can't get much brighter than that. That's how good it's going to be. That's coming from Daniel 12:3. So if you want to mark that, if you want to take where it says that in there, that where it says that they will shine like the sun, go back and read Daniel. That's one of the first statements where that comes from. In these parables, Jesus, in this sequence of parables, Daniel and Isaiah, in both of them, play prominent roles. Daniel and Isaiah. And this one's Daniel 12:3. This is what it says in Daniel 12:3. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteous like the stars forever and ever. So he's talking about here, if you're part of this group, if you're shining like the sun, what is it part of what you're going to be doing? You're going this way. You're out there. You're producing fruit. Amongst the weeds, amongst all these things that are trying to tie you down, what are you doing? Producing fruit. So the Greek term that's used there basically means this: the kingdom of heaven has come. That means we're no longer talking about when will the kingdom of heaven arrive. Jesus says what? It's here. But he also says there's coming a final judgment. But until then, the kingdom of heaven is here. The Son of Man's kingdom is here. The final judgment has not come. But this isn't so much talking about the final judgment, although it does have some pretty strong allusions to it. He's not trying to describe so much what hell's like. He's trying to describe what it's like to be separated from God. And that's what we're going to see, where it's really not very pleasant. The enemy sows a bad seed. That's the devil. This seed would be known to the people. If you were growing wheat in this culture, one of the things that you had to be careful of was something called the bearded darnel. It's a weed, and it looks almost exactly like the wheat. And what it does is, as the wheat starts to grow and this weed, bearded darnel, starts to grow, the darnel wraps its roots around the wheat. To where if you try to pull the weed out, you pull the wheat with it. So the wheat entangles the roots, and it's just really impossible to pull them out. But when the wheat starts to produce grain, it's easy to tell the difference between the two. When we're walking around out here in America today, in Walker, in Addis, wherever we are, in Baton Rouge, and we don't produce wheat, for all they know, or fruit, for all they know, we're what? We're darnel weed. It's when we produce the fruit that everybody out there can see, oh, we are separate from where the rest of the world is right now. Although it's all around us. And even though it's all around us, Jesus doesn't try to say you need to run from it, because where did Jesus eat dinner? With the sinner. Hey, dude, you know you're hanging out with drunkards? Yeah, I kind of know that. So the issue, that's one of the things we try to do. We recoil from evil, which naturally we should. But when the buildings caught on fire, the firemen did what? They went to address the evil. Too many times as Christians, what we do is we simply recoil from evil. Oh, that was horrible. Oh, that's disgusting. What are you going to do about it? Well, I'm going to wring my hands. Well, that's good, but meanwhile the boat's sinking. Is anybody going to do something about the water? I'll pray. Well, that's that old blues song, the late great Otis Redding. Preacher and a deacon out walking one day, out come a bear along the way. Preacher told the deacon to say a prayer, said, ain't no prayer going to kill that bear. We got to run for it. Those kind of prayers are not very useful when the bear is chasing, and if your prayer is, Lord, just let me be a little bit faster than my friend, you're cruel. That's not the prayer, right? The prayer sometimes is what? We got to go. The prayer is action. And while you're in the middle of the action, what are you asking for? Lord, give me strength. Lord, give me wisdom. Lord, give me patience. Whatever it is, it needs to be there. But where's the threat? Here. Where are you going? There. And sometimes as Christians, and this is part of what Jesus is trying to say right here, you can't be part of this. And watch what happens in Mark 9. You can't be part of this and try and pull out of all this. All right, so now we've got this. Last week we saw that the parable of the soil, that the seeds go to the good soil, they go to the bad soil. And we all know that that's not really about, well, some people are just going to be predestined to be saved. It's about Jesus' mercy through it everywhere, and people are going to have to decide what they do with this offering that's given to them. Pharisees are a great example of bad response to good seed. When the Pharisees saw Jesus heal a man, it's a dude called Lazarus, we kind of keep up with him, right? Comes out of the tomb, and the King James would say, don't roll that stone back. He stinketh. He be a bad odor now. But here comes Lazarus out of the tomb, wearing his burial clothes. That had to be a hoot. And what do some of the Pharisees do? Let's go find our leaders and tell them what? We got to kill this man. The people are going to start following this man, and it's better for one man to die than it is for a nation to perish. Now, whose hind parts were they thinking about? You can figure that one out. Because all they were doing was working themselves up into a way where they were justifying their actions based upon what their own selfish wants were. Woo, does that happen in the church? Where what we want is what becomes the most important thing. I want the preacher to wear a tie. I want the preacher to preach verse by verse. I want the carpet to be something other than this dismal orange. I want all choir songs. I don't want praise and worship. Don't you ever put another song in D flat. I can't sing in D flat. I'll give a shot at F sharp minor, but that's only once. Enough of this. Harumph. That's where we go. So this wheat that we just got through reading about, the whole story is about what? Wheat, right? And the harvest. So wheat, if you want to put a note right in here somewhere, Deuteronomy 8:8. This is what it says. In the book of Deuteronomy, you'll read about the promised land. It's a land of wheat and barley. It's a land of vines. It's a land of fig trees. It's a land of pomegranates. It's a land of olive oil. It's a land of honey. In other words, it's a land of abundance. It's a land where things are being what? Produced. And they are useful. And they are necessary. And wheat is one of those. So one of the things that's happening here is there's a long history of wheat with these people. And it says, as we noted, this wheat grows in the world. It's not just Israel. The idea that the movement that Jesus is heading is going beyond Israel, it's been put in place, but it's being put in place again. So, when you read something like this in Matthew 10, this is where I'm talking about themes. Now you need to start putting this together, because this is what it says in Matthew 10. The 12 were sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. Now, why would he tell them that? Because the first mission was where? Israel. It's not the ultimate mission, though. That's only the first mission. If you want to get to home plate, you have to get to what? first base. This is first base. First base is Israel. Why? Because I'm going to establish that I'm Messiah. I'm what they've been looking for. And when he starts talking about the Son of Man and the harvest and all that, who has that authority except who? Starts with a G, God. He's saying what? I'm God, guys. I have the ability to decide who gets harvested and who doesn't. All of this, right? But notice, so if somebody says something to you about, what is this stuff in Matthew 10 where the disciples were only going to Israel? Why was that? And the answer is what? First base. First base. But hang on, because nobody wants, you never win a game by getting to what? First base. You got to score. You got to come home. And home is where? He just said it. The world. The world. Do not go among them. That's the original. Go first to Israel. So the first mission was Israel. And that was Jesus' first mission too, to Israel. When he comes in on the triumphant entry, what does he say? Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Oh man, I've tried to make you guys understand. If you would have just come to me, I'd have been just like a hen that takes the chicks and puts them under her wings. What he's talking about there is when there's a fire, that the hen would actually cover the chicks so the chicks would survive. I was here. In other words, what he's saying is, I'm here to die for you, but you didn't even understand that. You never would come to me. But his first deal is Jerusalem. So in the parable of the sower, the seed is the word, but now the seed is the kingdom's sons. The first time it was the word being thrown out, now it's the son. So out of these two parables, he goes back and forth. So make sure when you're reading it, you're understanding the message and not just getting hung up on the details. But Jesus, because he wasn't reluctant to mix and match analogies, so he did it in this one. So the sons grow among the weeds. In fact, according to the parable of the sower, the word is sometimes choked out by weeds. In this case, though, in the parable, the wheat is allowed to grow and flourish. The harvest will be where the wheat and the weeds are separated. Angels are going to be the John Deeres. They're going to be the tractors that are going to come along and harvest in that scenario, harvesting the righteous crop. At the end of the age, the Son of Man is in control of the angels. The Son of Man is in control of the harvest. Well, there's only, who does that fit the description of? So when somebody says, you never claim to be God, well, go read this parable. Because he's saying he controls the angels. He says he controls the harvest. That sounds, when somebody says he never claimed that he was God, and he says, all power in heaven and earth was given to me. Oh, really? What does that make you? First Louis? Master Sergeant? I think not. You got a little bit higher pay grade here than you're going to have to go to, right? So Jesus is making it clear here in this parable that all authority is his. He just said that. Just as the Son of Man, and in fact the first words he says about himself in this parable is, there will be a Son of Man, right? So anytime, you just make this note, Son of Man always, Daniel 7, Son of Man, Daniel 7, Son of Man, because when he says this is what he says. Remember, we've said this before. The Bible will oftentimes not complete the entire thought process. It will simply begin it. Everybody else knew the rest of it. So for example, if I said, the Lord is my shepherd, then the rest of the people would know, I shall not want, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, the Lord. They'd have all of that. And so when he says the Son of Man, they know Daniel 7, and this is what it says, 13. I saw in the night visions, behold, with the cloud of heavens there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. So this is in heaven. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, and all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. It shall not pass away. His kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. When we say the kingdom of heaven is here, that's because he says it right here. When this started, this is it. When the Son of Man ascends to the throne, that says the kingdom of heaven, and he is saying the Son of Man is here. The kingdom of heaven is here. It's not finished. There will be a final judgment, but we're in the kingdom of heaven right now. We are these weeds and fruit and all this stuff that can be. We're in the midst of all that right now. So one time, when it got to the end, Jesus no longer needed to speak in parables because he had been crucified and resurrected. That tended to have a little bit of that put a little bit of a change in things. In Matthew 28, he says, "All authority in heaven and earth has been granted to me." No more parables. Now I'll just tell you like it is. I can do anything. I can judge. I can save. I can do all of this. I can sow. I can harvest. I can reap. So given this authority, Jesus is saying that everything that causes sin and all who do evil are weeded out and thrown into the fiery furnace. Daniel again. Now we get to Mark 9. This is how Jesus feels about people that mess with his people. This is how Jesus feels about somebody messing with you. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them if a large millstone were hung around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. If you're one of these people, he says, that causes my people to stumble, if your hand's the problem, cut it off. Because it would be better for you to figure out, I need to lose one hand than to go to hell. And what he's talking about here is Gehenna, where the fire never goes out. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off for the same reason. And if your eyes cause you to stumble, pluck it out. It's better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into hell. So he's saying two things here. First of all, quit messing with my people. Second of all, if you're smart, you'll change. He's putting both of those out there. But if you mess with my people, I got their six. I already died for them, and not yet, but I'm going to die for them. I'm going to resurrect for them, and they are mine. And nobody's going to pluck them from my hand. He's saying that, but he's also saying, if you're stupid enough to do that, and your hand is your problem, cut your hand off. Now, does he expect a bunch of people to be walking around? No. What he's using is the most dramatic language that he can use. And he says, their fire never goes out. And there's a clear picture there. And then he says this, the worms that eat them do not die, and the fire is not quenched. And then he says, everyone will be salted with fire. What does that mean? Well, hang on. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can you make it salty again? Have salt among yourselves and be at peace with each other. Three really powerful pictures here that tie into what we were just reading about, but you get the whole picture. Number one, the fiery furnace. That goes back to Daniel 12, and the furnace was so hot that it consumed those standing close by while Daniel and his friends were protected. In short, you either stand with Jesus or you don't. You're either in danger of the judgment or you're not. That's the first one. Second, Jesus is speaking of a place where he talks about the worm doesn't die and the fire never goes out. That's a place called Gehenna. What was Gehenna in their day? It's a nasty place. It's just a little bit outside of Jerusalem. It's where the Canaanites sacrificed their kids to Molech. It was a place where the most horrid took place. Now, at some point, America's going to answer for sacrificing its kids. It was just south of Jerusalem. It's where the Canaanites did this. It's the place where in modern day Jerusalem in Jesus' day, it's where they took the human excrement. It's where they took the rubbish and they piled it up. Now, if you've ever gone by a farm that has manure and you pile the manure up, what does the manure start to do? it starts to smolder.
Yeah.
And this fire, he says, will never go out because the excrement is continually added to it. In other words, the filth, the things that people do not need to be a part of, is being heaped on this fire, on this smoldering mass of dung. And then he says, the worms that eat them do not die. Because what proliferates in mess like this? Worms and maggots. Things that decompose. Things that we really don't want to put our hands on. But what we need to realize is the excrement is what? It's the sins that we produce. It's the evil ones that reject the word. It's all of that. And it gets thrown onto this dung heap, and it just smolders. And then he makes a statement. Everyone will be salted with fire. What in the world is that? Well, right there on that verse, you need to know this. Put Leviticus 2. Because salt was used to sanctify sacrifices. And it says, everyone will be salted with fire. What does he mean? Well, let's look at Leviticus first. It says, every grain offering you bring to the Lord, that would be wheat, Leviticus 2, must be made without yeast. For you are not to burn any yeast or honey in a food offering presented to the Lord. You can do that. You can bring them, but you've got to bring them as an offering of first fruits. You don't burn them. But they're not to be offered on the altar as a pleasing aroma. Season all of your grain offerings with salt. That's your fruit. That's the wheat. That's the stuff that he says, this is what we're going to know how to harvest. He says, do what? Season that with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. All right, forget salt for a second and think about what he's really saying. Do not leave the covenant of your God. And this was the old covenant, but now it's the new covenant. What does it mean? Do not leave the covenant of your God. What does it mean? It means simply this. How were you saved? By my death, says Jesus. Where are these covenants now written, says Hebrews? Not on a tablet, but where? On your heart. You're now the fruit that's going out. You are the people going to the 911, he says. And he says that everyone's sacrifice will be accompanied by fire. It doesn't mean we're all going to burn up. He's using more poetic language. What does he mean here? You're going to get your knuckles skinned. You're going to get pushed around. You're going to get insulted. You're going to get maybe even threatened. You may be told that what you're doing isn't of God at all. But the answer is it's between, if you understand these scriptures, then you know where you need to be. So everyone's sacrifice, that's a pleasing aroma to God, which is our obedience to God, is a pleasing aroma. It's going to be accompanied by fire, which means what? How about persecution? How about trials? How about suffering? How about weeds all around you? How about, like Paul, you just get frustrated? How about life? And now you got to decide whether life controls you or you remain grounded in your faith. Because if life controls you, then we're back to the book of Job, where Satan tells Job, give me the environment. Let me mess with the environment. Let me take stuff from him. Let me give him stuff. Let me make things. I'll break him. And God says, you can't kill him because that would kill his soul. Well, it wouldn't kill his soul. That would make him a soul at that point. His body has to stay in place. Other than that, so what does that tell us about this world? What can this world do to us? Everything except take our what? Can't take our soul. It's ours. Why is it ours? Because God protects it. And Jesus says, woe to the man that takes from my little one and causes them to stumble. So we read this stuff, and sometimes we get these pictures of fiery furnaces and people burning in hell forever. And what he's really saying is, no, what we're really talking about is they're out there living amongst the excrement, smoldering, being decomposed by worms and maggots. That picture of hell is more frightful to me than anything I can possibly imagine. Good heavens. And he's using the illustration, Gehenna, which is what the Greek goes to. He's using this illustration of what really was going on out there. And he's saying, that's how disgusting it is to me when you won't accept what I've tried to give you. But then he says this, come harvest time, when the John Deeres are out there, when the angels are going, come on. When all of that starts, it's not going to be hard to see who the sons of the kingdom of heaven are and who the sons of evil are. Evil's going to be left to smolder in the dung and the rubbish. It's going to literally be a pile of poop. And I will say it nicely in here, but you can see the picture. The sons of the kingdom of heaven, Daniel already described them. They are wise. They'll shine like the brightness of the heavens, and they will lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Friends, we are in the middle of a 911. And we got to decide whether we're going to run out the building or whether we're going to run in the building. I don't think Jesus was ever trying to scare somebody into, if you don't follow me, you're going to hell. Some of these preachers that stand up today, there was the old one, what happens if your heart stops now? Where would you be? I don't know that wins a lot of points with people. But what Jesus was saying was this, you got a great choice here. I can tell you when you live this life, it's going to be tough. There's going to be weeds. There's going to be fire. Your sacrifice is going to be made with salt that has gone through fire, but it creates a pleasing aroma to me. And when it creates a pleasing aroma to me, I can tell you that this is going to make a difference in your life and in other people's life. Because if that's what's happening in your life, you're going to make sure somebody else is rescued. So, we're in a situation now where one of the things we're going to be able to do is really start working with our partner school. We keep saying this because it keeps happening, and it keeps happening a little better and a little better and a little better. Because of an extremely generous donation, we're going to be able not only to provide those people with food, but we also want to provide firsthand contact. We want to start meeting the people who are receiving the food. Otherwise, all we're doing is telling the firemen, you go in the building, we'll stand out here and go, sick 'em, guys. You understand what I'm saying? Because if we don't get involved in this, where are we in that whole picture? We're outside looking up, watching, man, hope it works out for them. Well, we're going to get involved. And when we get involved, we want to get involved in such a way that we can actually make a difference beyond just simply handing food. We can hand them food that maybe they're not aware of, or we can give them a chance to feel like they're Americans in a place where they haven't felt like they're American. I don't know. But God, He'll help us sort that out. Because the last thing I want to be is standing out next to the dung heap where the maggots and the flies and the worms proliferate and the stuff never stops burning. Man. That's all I got. Father, we ask your blessing. First of all, we're just, the message that is brought through the parables is so strong. The understanding that the salt was part of what you expected as part of a grain offering, and how it was going to be burned and provide a pleasing aroma, and that our sacrifice will also be salted, and it will be tested with fire, and it will provide a pleasing aroma. Woo! May we recognize what you are telling us we can be. And may we also recognize the stern warning you have provided to those who try to mess with that. That you are indeed mindful of your fruit. And you will indeed harvest every single piece of it that is yours. And although we have a hard time separating the harvest from the weeds, that won't be an issue for the Son of Man. So we humbly bow at your feet. We recognize and submit to you because your plan is so much better than anything we could build or comprehend. So we thank you for that. And we ask that you bless this church. Bless our efforts. Be with us as we try to be the sacrifice that is salt and fire. It's in your Son's name we prayed, and everyone said,